Okay, let's get started. Well, first of all, on behalf of the WaterMan project and the ERB Water Core Group, I would like to welcome you to this roundtable discussions with the big question, how can water recycling contribute to water resilience in humid regions? We're delighted to see so many here, both the ones face-to-face here in Brussels with us, and also the people online. I believe that we are more than 100 participants, which is great. And you represent ministries, national authorities, regional and local authorities, municipal water companies, research institutes, and more. And I guess that really shows that this topic is a big concern, it's of interest, it's something that we need to work with, and even more so in the future. Yes, so my name is Tobias Vakini. I work for the region Kalmar County and is also the lead beneficiary for the WaterMan project, which we'll be presenting in short, and also function as the secretariat for the Euroregion Water Core Group, which we'll also represent in short. But before we dive into that, I would like to give the word to Jens. You will say a few words about the agenda and the topics of today.
Thank you, Tobias, for this introduction. My name is Jens Masuch. I'm part of the coordination team of the WaterMan project, which together with the Water Core Group of Euroregion Baltic and Region Kalmar County hosts this roundtable discussion today. Yeah, Tobias, you mentioned it. We have a lot of participants. You see our keyword is humid regions here and water recycling, and more than 100 participants. And we have also a lot of countries among the participants. So we have 7 Baltic Sea countries represented here in the audience. But we are also happy that it's not only the Baltic Sea region, also colleagues from the Netherlands, from Belgium, and also from France. So other humid regions are joining us today. We are very happy about that. And even some semi-arid countries have registered. So from Greece, I saw a registration, and also from Spain. So I think we have a very interesting also audience here. A little bit about the agenda. You have seen it before. You have it was handed out. But just the general idea of this meeting, we have 2.5 hours with a little bit of a break, a short break that we have, and afterwards we will have a networking coffee. That's the idea of this event. And in the first block, you can see here, we will have kind of presentations, input lectures from different perspectives on the topic. Altogether, it will be 4 lectures like this. Then we will have a short break. As I said, we will rearrange a little bit. This will be also an opportunity, maybe you have seen it already. There are some posters on the wall about the WaterMan project. So if you want to dive a little bit deeper into what we are doing, this could be an opportunity for you to do that in this short 15 minutes break. And after the break then, we will go on with a panel discussion and with the questions, do we need specific regulatory frameworks and support schemes for water resilience and recycling in humid regions? And this panel discussion, so it will be on the panel, there will be the speakers from before, but this will be open on the one hand here to the audience in the room, so you are very welcome then also to ask your questions, and it also is with the participation of the online participants. So if you are participating online, you have the possibility to ask your questions in the chat, and Tobias will check here and there the questions so that also they will become part of our discussion. As we have a lot to discuss, interesting things to discuss, and 2.5 hours only, our suggestion is that we would start really with the lectures, yeah, that we first get a comprehensive picture. You may have questions immediately, so we ask you just to keep that in mind. And then when we have after the break the discussion round, then you are also very welcome to ask direct questions to the speakers. So this is our suggestion how we go on. Yes, so that's the setup, Tobias, and maybe you can just explain yeah, how does it come that we have this roundtable discussion here today? What is the background of it?
Yes, thank you, Jens, for that. I mentioned already the Euroregion Baltic Water Core Group, and that's really a platform which we have used throughout the years for cooperation and exchange of different issues regarding water. It's part of the Euroregion Baltic Cooperation, which is actually 9 or 8 regions in the South Baltic Sea area, in Lithuania, Poland, Denmark, and Sweden. It was founded, this water core group was founded in 2005. And what we have seen, though, throughout the years is that the topics, the challenges are a bit different. Initially, when this was started, water quality, and more specifically eutrophication, was very high on the agenda together with water management. But in the last years, we have seen more and more the impacts of climate change, and this has sort of changed a little bit how we see the topics and the challenges that we address. So the WaterMan project has been initiated through this water core group, and we are also the host of today's roundtable discussion. Just to show you a picture, this is, you don't have to look at the details, but this really just shows that if you would ask the citizens of Europe, I think most people think that water supply is really a concern only for the southern and the mid part of Europe. But if you look on the right-hand side and you highlight a little bit more, zoom in to the northern parts, you can see that on a regional, local level, there are parts that still are affected by water supply. And to show this in another way, with Sweden as an example, and I guess the other countries, you could do the same thing. Here's a picture, a map, showing 100 years, starting from 1990 until the end of this century, 2050. And the change of water supply, and which is driven by climate change. And what you can see, that is a winter season, we are expecting wetter conditions, which is not very surprising because of the warmer weather. We will have less snow and more rain. The big change for us regarding water supply is, of course, spring and summer, even though you see that it's really, on a regional level, it's quite a lot of differences. And where I come from, the southeastern part of Sweden, are the ones that also will be affected the most. And that's why our organization, I think also the municipalities from our county and other actors are concerned about this, and it's something that we have started to work with. So, with this in background, I'll let Jens, you will present the WaterMan project a little bit more and the activities connected to these challenges that I just showed you.
Yes, thank you, Tobias. So water scarcity was a faraway issue for a long time in the Baltic Sea region, but this has changed recently now, and the result, and one of the results or responses to that, is the WaterMan project. I do not want to take much time to explain now the project. You have the posters here. They give you, in the breaks, you will get a closer picture of our projects. Just in a very small nutshell version now of the project. So the goal of the scope of the project, so WaterMan promotes water recycling in the Baltic Sea region, and it helps municipalities, water companies and authority to just get started. So it's not a research project, it's not an innovation project, but it's a project that aims at rolling out or kind of supporting a wider application what is already possible and feasible today. So this is kind of our focus. Consequently, also the backbone of the partnership are municipalities and water companies, so the local level here, which is of course the core level or the key level in order to bring water recycling into practice, and supported by regional authorities, domain experts and network organizations. About the activities, so we have different activities. We have an elaboration of local and regional strategies in 7 model regions which want to make water recycling a part of their water supply strategies in order to make them more resilient against the background of climate change. We have also 11 pilot measures. This is what the poster exhibition is about, where we just get things started in these municipalities. And on top of that, we spread also the world, because we have 15 partners, but in the end, yeah, we have several hundreds of water companies and municipalities in the Baltic Sea region, and we want to also spread the word to the others, and this is another thing. So we have information, competence development, and also policy dialogue. And one of the examples is this roundtable discussion here today for this policy dialogue, and we will have also a second one on 6th of November. It's already scheduled, where we will also want to follow up on the discussions that we will start today. So, a word about water recycling and in the Baltic Sea region. So what is specific about it? Why do we have always this little bit of the geographic focus when we talk about that? Yeah, the Baltic Sea region is a humid region. Yeah, so it's not about water scarcity and supply problems all over, but there are periods in which, and locally and in time, where water can get scarce nowadays. But this was, like also Tobias explained, for a long time it was completely different. In the Baltic Sea region, everybody was used to that water is available, that even drinking water is available at all times, yeah, and in all places, in a sufficient amount. And this is why also for all the human applications that we have, we are used to utilize drinking water. And in the Baltic Sea region, it's predominantly, not exclusively, but predominantly generated out of the groundwater. So this is kind of the way we were used to kind of create the water that we use for human applications. And having this said, it is like that you can say the water then arrived at the surface, and you can say that the Earth's surface is something like the user surface for the humans, yeah, for water. And on this surface it was like this, that then the drinking water produced in the waterworks were just applied for different applications, for households, for industry, for agriculture, but also for green areas or sport fields that had to be watered. And after this was done, then this water was put into the sewer system, forwarded to the wastewater treatment plants, and they had then the purpose to purify the water to a level that it can be again discharged into the natural water circle, which then was responsible for the rest, meaning with evaporation and also infiltration, yeah, to purify it to the level that it's groundwater again, that it can be extracted, and then the water was available again. This is kind of the ideal world, ideal form of kind of preparing water and preparing water again, I would say, for human utilizations, and this was what we were used to. But the situation has changed, yeah? So in this way, not at all times and in all places, always sufficient amounts of water are available, and that is why it also needs new strategies and approaches here. And this is where water recycling comes in. And one thing that one may ask, of course, is, does it always need drinking water for all the applications? Is it really necessary, or can it also be different qualities of water that we use? And having asked this question, it's also then, is it only groundwater that we have to focus on, or are there other sources of water? Can we diversify the sources of the usable water that we kind of utilize for human applications? And having this a little bit thought through, then there open up new possibilities, of course. On the one hand, it is, I would say, like what I just described here, this is what we can call, I would call it the linear water use, the traditional water use. This is kind of what we are used to. But if we go into diversification and think about it, of qualities and also of sources, then new opportunities open up. And this is just examples. So, of course, the municipal wastewater is something that can be reused. Yeah, this is the term that we see for agricultural irrigations, for industry, maybe also for irrigation in urban contexts, for gardens, or also for green areas. So this is one of the new loops that we can kind of add to this linear use of water that we are used to. There can also be smaller loops, yeah. It can be that in a house, yeah, the water that is used for the shower then can be immediately in a small loop be reused for toilet flushing. So there we are in the area of gray water reuse, you can say. Also in industrial processes, yeah, some kind of water that you use for producing something with a little bit of purification. It may also be used again, for example, for cooling purposes. So there are these small loops that are also possible. And as we are here in a humid region in the Baltic Sea, something that has also to be considered, and that is a major resource in order to make water supply, local water supply, more resilient, is then, of course, the stormwater and the rainwater. Because what we see is we get more and more, there is an alternation of too much and too little water, and this gets more and more extreme, and this poses, of course, the questions: is stormwater, is rainwater not a resource that we have to use? Yeah, it's hard to ignore this. So this is, in the narrow sense, no reuse, yeah, because this water was not used and will be used again, like in the other examples, but it's actually pre-used, yeah. Instead of waiting until it turns into groundwater and we use it we can of course utilize it directly when it comes to the Earth's surface. Yeah. So, and all this together is then, yeah, a new idea, a new scheme of ensuring water supply, and this is how we look at water recycling at the Baltic Sea region. So there are these three main sources, this diversification of the sources that needs to be considered in order to get to new water supply schemes that are robust enough for climate change conditions. So this is kind of just the topic that we want to tackle here today. And of course, in order to make this kind of rolling this out, yeah, to go to a wider application of that, what does it mean? Of course, it needs technical solutions to do this, yeah, for water recycling. It needs local actors that are willing to implement them, and our project partners are such forerunners, so they are there. It needs, but also strategic approaches at local and regional level, yeah, so it's not a technical issue anymore, water supply, but it's really also deciding what are the priorities, who gets water when there is scarcity, who not, yeah, so this is also something. And of course, what it also needs, it needs support schemes, it needs regulatory frameworks at the national and EU level. And this is kind of the topic that we would like to discuss today a little bit, and starting the dialogue, if this kind of regulatory frameworks that we have, yeah, do they really consider, yeah, what we need in the Baltic Sea region in human countries, or does it need adjustments here? So, having this said, this was just the introduction a little bit, and it is like this: when it comes to regulatory framework, there has been an important first step been done in 2023. It got into force, and that is the Water Reuse Regulation 741. I think this is the numbers. This is the first step, kind of, to create a framework for water reuse. And yeah, this is now in practice since 1.5 years. And yeah, maybe there is also more to come. And we are very happy that today Valentina Bastino from the European Commission, DG Environment, is with us from the, when I understood correctly, the unit is now called Marine Environment and Clean Water Services. And Valentina will give us now a little bit an update about the state of implementation of this regulation and what is more to come at the EU level in the future.
Introduction. And thank you for the presentation, Jens and Tobias, because you actually set very nicely the scene for what I'm going to say today. So, my name is Valentina Bastino. I've been working on the water reuse regulation since 2018. So I was there almost at the beginning of the process of setting up a water reuse body of legislation in the Union. I will try to not dwell too much on the first slides because Jens and Tobias already set the scene. This is just a bit of an illustration. You don't need to go right now into the numbers appearing, but basically with the publication on water resources across Europe, you see here the cover. There's a clear trend that started, well, in this graph starts in the year 2000, where the per capita water availability is going down. And it's not going down just in Spain or Malta or Cyprus, you know, the most obvious drier countries in the Union, but it's starting to show up also in more northern, more humid latitudes. This is another graph that illustrates the same picture, and it's based on the WAY Plus indicator developed by the European Environment Agency, which compares water availability with water needs and demands, where values above 20% signals that there's water stress, and values over 40% indicating that this stress is severe and there's unsustainable freshwater use. Clearly, you see from this table, the problem is at the moment a lot more apparent in Cyprus, Malta, Greece, etc. But slowly, you can see already some signs in Denmark of at least seasonal issues with water availability. And this becomes a lot more apparent, and this echoes a little bit what Tobias was showing on his map, that even in Sweden, Finland, Poland, you know, northern countries, we start seeing and witnesses issues. So the dark blue sort of colors that you see on these slides, so on the seasonal variation, you can see that when it comes especially to the summer months, which is at the bottom right, you see southern Finland is affected. You see dark spots in northern Germany, in Poland. So the problem is starting to show up. So this is it. I'm not going to say more. Everything has been said. So we are really seeing that there's a growing risk of mega droughts lasting for several years. Again, more apparent in the south, but slowly starting to show up in other places. Extreme precipitation has increased, so we're simultaneously having to deal with too much water in certain moments and too little water in others or in different regions. And in general, we are just seeing that climate change and the predictions that were made are slowly or well, actually accelerating, coming through. This information comes from the European Climate Risk Assessment, which was published in March last year. So it seems clear that we do have to really start working a bit more intensively about increasing water resilience. Adaptation to climate change will be crucial. We can always try to reduce emissions and try to control climate change, but there's a lot of climate change already happening, so we need to adapt to it and try to make the best use we can of the resources we have in order to be able to maintain our health, well-being, livelihood, and the health also of our environment. And I just wanted to draw your attention especially to the fact that the EU Climate Change Adaptation Strategy, which now dates back to 3 years ago in 2021, specifically mentioned the need to look at water resources, reducing the use of water resources, and encouraging more efficient practices and savings. So this was kind of really hinting at looking at water reuse as one of the possible tools. I'm not going to read every little bit of this slide. I'm sure that the slides will be probably shared, so you can look at your ease. But this is to say that this is becoming, the need to use water resources more efficiently is becoming more evident, more urgent, but we haven't started yesterday to reflect on these issues. Already in 2007, there was a communication on water scarcity and droughts, going on in 2012 with a blueprint to safeguard water resources. And since then, there's been a number of initiatives, both legal and non-legal, to really try to encourage our water management system to go towards a more efficient and more sustainable direction. And one of the last ones is indeed the water reuse regulation, to make more efficient use of this stream of water. Focusing specifically on the water reuse regulation, it was mentioned in earlier initiatives, the need for the practice, but it was with the Circular Economy Action Plan in 2015 that the Commission committed to put out a legal instrument on water reuse. And then in the second edition of the Circular Economy Action Plan in 2020, again, the Commission committed to work on the one hand, on helping and supporting member states in applying the rules of the water reuse regulation in agriculture, but also to facilitate water reuse and efficiency in other sectors, including in industrial processes. And the text that you see in italics is actually quotes from the action plan. So this sort of set the scene also for the work that we've been doing in the last 4 years and that we plan to do from now on. The water reuse regulation was, as was mentioned, came into force in 2020, but the rules started applying in June 2023. This was to give enough time to member states to get organized and set the systems in place to be able to apply the requirements. Some member states, some member states already had systems in place and they needed to adapt them to the new rules. Others didn't and they needed to set them up. And in the meantime, the Commission has been working together with stakeholders, member states, to try to facilitate this work. So one of the first products that we published after the coming into force of the regulation was guidelines on the application, and this Commission Notice 2022, where we really try to set out what the rules, sometimes legal text can be a bit for the lawyers, and we try to really explain what sort of analysis were intended to be done and what needed to be considered when developing risk management, etc. So this was the first tool that we put out and that we worked out with the working group involving member states and stakeholders. A second product, which came later and was published last year in the official journal, is a delegated regulation setting out technical specifications on risk management. So building on all the analytical work that was done with the preparation of the guidelines and on the basis of the rules set out in annex to the regulation, we really try to set out the different elements that need to be looked at and considered when preparing a risk management plan. Another area of work that the Commission is looking at is the format for data reporting. There has already been one reporting cycle that closed in November. We are about to start a second reporting cycle. We expect the big package of data to come in 2026. At the moment, it's only reporting about non-compliance in certain plans. The full bulk of the information should arrive in 2026. So this is what the Commission has been doing to support the implementation of the regulation. What are the member states doing? Well, as you might know, the regulation foresee the possibility for member states to decide that water reuse is not appropriate in their territory or in part of their territory. This was something that was negotiated because certain countries felt they didn't really need it. Yeah? They said, we don't irrigate, we have enough water. Others were a bit more against the idea of using wastewater. But really, some were saying, we don't see a need to set up a system, to set up structures for something that we don't really need. So there is this possibility. And as you can see on this map, which is updated up to October or November last year, the countries that appear in sort of light purple are the ones that so far have officially communicated that they do not think it is appropriate. This is 8 member states at the moment. The decision is not something that is cast in stone forever. A member state, of course, always has the freedom to reevaluate the situation and to change their mind and say, actually, we think we might need it. There's, of course, other legislation that is supporting water reuse. You might be aware that the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive has recently been revised, and it came into force not so long ago, at the end of last year. Similarly, the Industrial Emissions Directive was also revised, and in both pieces of legislation, the Commission tried to strengthen the links with water reuse and encourage the use of practices that increase the efficiency of resources. So, for example, in this Industrial Emissions Directive, through environmental management systems, industrial plants are encouraged to really consider energy, but also water efficiency measures. And there, water reuse is explicitly mentioned as one of the tools that industry should consider. It is not an obligation, but it is a strong invitation to really consider this in their management plans. All that said, there remains some untapped potential. These numbers that you see on these slides are not so recent. They are taken from the impact assessment that was made in 2018, before then the water reuse regulation was published. So there may have been changes in there, but roughly we have over 40 million cubic meter a year of water, which is wastewater, which is treated in the EU. But a small percentage, 2.4 at the time, was further treated for reuse. I hope it may be a bit more by now. There's great discrepancies between the level of water reuse. There's countries that have been facing stress and drought condition for a long time, and they have invested more into water reuse. You can see, for example, Cyprus is quite a leader, recycling about 89% of their wastewaters. Malta is closely following with 60%. Spain, 12%. Italy and Greece, 5%, which is much smaller. This is the percentage. By volume, we have Spain and Italy leading. Of course, these numbers may have been evolving in the last few years. But we do see that reuse is not limited to the Mediterranean areas. They are really investing a lot in it for obvious reasons, but we do hear, and we keep hearing more and more about different projects, more in other sectors, like industry, for example, from more northern latitude. So the calculations made at the time of the preparation of the regulation water reuse was that we could move from 2015 about 1 billion cubic meter a year of water being further treated for use, to a 6-fold increase. So by this year, it should be 6 billion. Now, I do not have data to see whether this has occurred, but I'm hoping that with more data coming to the Commission, we may be able to really evaluate whether this, it wasn't a target, but this sort of potential has actually been used or not. So what is the planned work now and the next steps? Well, as you probably know, the Commission is working at the development of a water resilience strategy, and in all likelihood, water reuse will feature quite prominently in the strategy, because it is one important tool to manage water stress, water scarcity. So from our side, the work that is planned to do is to continue to support member states in implementing the water reuse regulation. Even in the countries that have been doing water reuse for decades, We still need to work on the preparation of risk management plans, on overcoming certain issues with validation monitoring. So there is still work that we need to do. And also to support those sort of new kids on the block that want to engage in water reuse but haven't done it before, to help them and support them in taking out the practice. And this is why projects like the WaterMan are also very important, because they really provide, at a more localized level, support and help to get started. At the same time, as already announced in the Circular Economy Action Plan, the idea is that we really would like to promote water reuse beyond agriculture. Agriculture it is the largest water consumer in Europe. We felt that with the rules we were tackling one big chunk of the work, but it is now time to also look beyond and really pick up the calls that we also get from more humid regions to start looking at industrial use, civic uses, environmental uses. How are we going to do that? Well, the idea is to really draw on the experience that there is in Europe, both in southern areas, but also in other sectors, as we have heard. So I'm very interested to be here and hearing what you have to say about what may be needed, etc. And so we plan to work on further exchanges of best practice through workshops and seminars. This is fairly easy action that we can take, and that seems to be appreciated, people learning from each other. We will continue working through this working group Water Reuse, which is a very active group and brings together authorities, but also stakeholders and representations of the operators in the sectors. So this is really the plan. And we certainly have our ears open as to what else may be needed. We have an evaluation of the water reuse regulation, which is planned to be done by June 2028. And we have to evaluate how is this working and whether it is feasible, useful, and necessary to expand the scope to other sectors. So we will be analyzing the reporting data, but we clearly need the input from people that work out there in the administration, in the plants, in municipalities, to tell us what is it that may stop you from setting up water reuse, and is there anything that can be done from our side to smooth out those barriers and help you set up these systems. It doesn't have to be regulatory action. If needed, we can consider certainly regulatory action, but it can also be other ways of supporting, producing guidelines, continuing with the technical tools or packages to really get people started. So I'm here to listen. With this, I will close my presentation. The general conclusions is that we can see that there's an increasing interest in water reuse. It is no longer so automatic that we have plenty of water at any time, so we need to look into this option. The potential is clearly there. We recycle quite a small percentage of wastewaters. And so we will be looking at all these aspects. I just listed a few bullets. I'm not going to read them out in the interest of time, but we are really trying to explore in a broad sense what possibilities may be there and what we can do to support it. With this, I thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, write them down for the end.
Yeah, thank you, Valentina. As I said, the questions we would like to make in the discussion round a little bit later. Before we release you and the next presentation comes, maybe one question. You mentioned the evaluation in June 2028 of the water reuse regulation. And also you mentioned already that there are considerations to kind of extend, maybe or to look into extending the use cases, the applications, beyond also agricultural aggregation, if I understood correctly. Just coming back to what we presented in the beginning, is there also hope that you do not look into other applications, but also into other sources of water, like, for example, rainwater or stormwater, or what is the direction?
Yes, well, the evaluation of the water reuse regulation is described and set out quite in some details in the legal instrument. So we will have to follow those instructions, so to speak. And there the instruction is clearly to look at, is this regulation working? And if so, is it feasible to extend it to other scopes? So that is a fairly circumscribed exercise. However, in the in the thinking about water resilience, we will be exploring other sources. So you mentioned, for example, grey water reuse or rainwater harvesting. So There's lots of different initiatives. Also, under the revised Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive, there is provisions about integrated water management and development management plan at urban level. So that is certainly not off the table. It is policy aspects that we will be considering, not necessarily under the legal umbrella of the water reuse regulation, but it could be other instruments, other existing legislation, like the Industrial Emissions Directive, the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive, or softer, non-legally binding actions. So yes, that is certainly a possibility.
Yeah, thank you for this further explanation. Yeah, then we would move on to the next presentation. And Valentina, you said that, yeah, you want to listen what are the demands. And actually, it's not the WaterMan project here, or also there is an overlap in the partnership, but it's a sister project, you can say. It's the project Re-Nutri Water, which is specifically dealing with the reuse of municipal wastewater. And in the course of this project, there was a stakeholder survey carried out in order to see what are the demands, what are the interests really of the protagonists that will bring water recycling or water reuse into practice. And I would like to give the floor now to Clara Ram. From the Re-Nutri Water project, from the Polish, the Economic Chamber Polish Water Works. Yeah, so this is the lead partner of the project, in order to give us some insights and to present what came out of this stakeholder survey in terms of the barriers and the potentials of water reuse, so the reuse of municipal wastewater.
Thank you, Jens. Thank you for the invitation of the sister project or brother project to the water reuse project that we have in the Baltic Sea region. So let me introduce myself. I'm Clara Ram, as Jens already said, and I represent the Chamber of Economy Polish Water Works, which is the Association of Water and Wastewater Services in Poland. So we represent about a bit more than 80% of the Polish market of water and wastewater services. So our core business is just provide water services to citizens. And I also assistant professor at Warsaw University of Technology. So, okay, that's right. So, Re-Nutri Water project is, as I said, part of Interreg Baltic Sea projects, and we just concentrate on urban wastewater treatment plants and how to reclaim, recover, and reuse water produced by the urban wastewater treatment plants. So its title is just closing water, local water cycles, but recirculating nutrients and water and using them in nature. So we concentrate on nutrients and on water. And we are 5 countries from the Baltic Sea region, from Finland, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, and Denmark, research institutions, water utilities, self-governments, local authorities, associations, so all together we are working on it. And why we concentrated on urban wastewater treatment plant? Because we see that the drinking water is provided for many services, but it is not, it doesn't fit with the quality to the purposes of some recipients. So we, as water services, we provide drinking water to, for example, industry or for greening areas in the cities, but it is not properly adjusted water, so it doesn't fit to these purposes. In addition, a lot of energy, human labor, chemicals are put to this water just to produce it, because it is very high quality water, and this is a problem that we would like to solve. That's why we would like to produce fit for purpose water, so just respond to the needs of many recipients and many utilities that would like to use this fit for purpose water that can be reclaimed from treated urban wastewater. So you can see here on this slide that there is a lot of possibilities how this fit-for-purpose water can be after provided to different recipients. So we decided during our project to have this survey, and we obviously started by urban wastewater treatment plant operators because it was easy for us as the association. We could send questions to our members, but we also cooperated with our colleagues from remaining countries. And we divided this questionnaire into 5 blocks. So general questions about how the utility works, and after internal and external purposes. So we concentrated our questions if wastewater is used locally in the wastewater treatment plant, and it is, and if it is sent to another entities, another recipients, and if it is externally also used, and what are opportunities, barriers, and needs toward this use, how we can make it organization better. Here you have number of participants and percentage on residents served, so we calculated on personal equivalent all these responses just to see how much, let's say, market we cover. So for example, in Lithuania, we got only 4 answers, but because they were the biggest Lithuanian cities like Vilnius, that's why we covered quite a big amount of citizens in Lithuania, as well in Poland, and quite well in Denmark. So this representation is quite good from these countries. And the water reclamation, if we ask operators, they see really the potential, even now or in the future. So a great majority of operators, they see that it is a way that they have to develop their activities, their businesses together with another recipient. They really have to work on it in the future, or they are just working already now. We also decided about the development of water use, if it is justified, and what are the best direction that we have to concentrate on in our countries. And here you can see that the Baltic Sea region is not a homogeneous area, so there are differences between countries, because Danish operators, they see really industrial recipients as the biggest part of the market that they can cooperate with. So they are industrial recipients, and when you see, for example, in Poland there are urban applications, mainly irrigation of green areas. So this development of cooperation with other recipients is different. When we see agriculture, they see, but when, for example, sharing the knowledge about Polish situation, we see that agriculture doesn't see any potential to use reclaimed water in their activities. There is no way now, and that's why Poland has derogation for this regulation mentioned already by Valentina. So the treated wastewater is sent for external users, but we also ask why locally it is not. So here you have answer from Polish utilities. They have lack of financing, so they cannot afford any investment just to invest in water reclamation and reuse, and there is no legal guidelines. So this regulation doesn't fit to their plans, and they don't see any legal guidelines just to develop such a solutions. And we also barriers in general. What are the barriers? Why in your country you don't develop, or why it is not developed in your countries? And here also you can see differences between I chose 3 countries, and when we see at Denmark and Poland, again, no legal requirements. So they really don't know where to start and how to on which legal act should be the most important for them. So we are trying with the regulation, but this regulation is very focused on agriculture, and in addition, it's very general. There's no details. I think that with the risk assessment, with these guidelines on risk assessment, they are really a good guidelines with a lot of details. So no legal requirements, and microbiological hazard, which is quite obvious that we see it. So it is also safety issues that they mention mainly in Denmark and Poland, and also unprofitability of the investment, which is mentioned by Latvian utilities. So again, financial issues that are raised because of investment compared to existing solutions, or because just there is sufficient water resources there locally, so they just don't need to invest in such solutions. There were also a block about the financial issues, how these activities should be financed. Just one answer on the question who should finance the implementation of such solutions. And I think that it is quite obvious that water utilities, they see B2B contract potential, that there are 2 parties, recipient and urban wastewater treatment plant operators, and they have to cooperate, sign contract, and finance this activity. But also Polish utility, they see the potential, maybe that a government and the public funds should also support such solutions, at least at the beginning. Reclaimed water and treated wastewater is widely used internally, but wastewater treatment plant operators, because they don't need any water permit, anything, so they just use it internally for washing devices, cleaning sewers, etc. So internally, it is developing quite a lot, and majority of urban wastewater treatment plant operators, they are already use this. They close this local water circuit and use treated wastewater locally. But for external purposes, we see the potential in industry. So energy industry, for example, for cooling combined heat and power plants, which is the case, for example, in Poland, but also a lot of industrial applications, and also irrigation of green areas, which is developing quite well in Poland, and also some specific external users, very individual cases. So just to conclude, it was really wide survey. So I just chosen some issues to share with you, and we also developing more questionnaires on another groups of stakeholders. But just to conclude, I have to say that the regulation is the only legal act, but it's not sufficient because it focuses on agricultural applications, and we are diving a lot just to understand what are the attitude of stakeholders, what do they think, and how to approach also urban wastewater treatment plant operators. And as I said, water recovery has a potential for internal applications, and it is used by operators of plants. And for external use, it's still rare, but it is developing in the Baltic Sea region. And the most critical challenge is the safe use and cost effectiveness. So 2 issues that were raised by the operators. And the Baltic Sea region is not a homogeneous area, so we have different approaches. So what we can see in the future, that external applications will develop toward industrial and urban applications. rather bypassing agriculture, maybe in some Danish islands, they will be developed, but mainly the focus is on industry and urban applications, because for urban wastewater treatment plant, it is the easiest way, because they're just close to the urban areas, so greening areas are just close to the plant. And what is the most important also, that we have to raise awareness and we have to educate and still say more and more about what circular economy is and how to implement it also in the Baltic Sea region. So thank you for your attention. If you need more details, I will be happy to share with you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Clara, for giving us this insight. So first question is there more data to come? Do you plan further surveys?
Yes, now I'm cooperating closely with Danish association, DANVA, just to develop more this, just to treat these questions and answers. And also we already prepared a survey for local public authorities and for associations. So we are just in ongoing process.
Another thing that you stressed very much was that there was, on the one hand, that it was set no legal requirement. On the other hand, no profitability, also the investments needs. I mean, what happened, I think also since you did the survey is that the recast Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive came into force. And there we have mentioned also water reuse. And in practice, it means also that if you fulfill these standards, you have water that is already very much already, I would say, ready for reuse, at least if you apply the fit for purpose approach. And that means also that investments are necessary. Do you see in the survey already that there may be a synergy between this directive and the further rollout of water reuse, or the openness to that? Do you hear already voices in your group?
Yes, so Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive is something that is very raise emotions in operators, between operators, because it's really a lot to do, and I think that it will help. So this Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive will help to work on water reuse. That it's good way.
Okay, so thank you very much, Clara, for these insights. And let's now move on. And now we leave the Baltic Sea region for a while, because of course it is like, there are the framework now, the water reuse regulation and all the other also frameworks and policies that Valentina has mentioned, but it's never forbidden to be ahead of what is required. And what we found out is actually in our research, there are other humid regions which are this step ahead and which do much more than is required in legal frameworks. And I think the most prominent example that we found here is the region where we are now here. It's the region of Flanders in Belgium, where the regional government has initiated a blue deal, and this is addressing the topic of water resilience, including water recycling, and one of the ways to achieve better water resilience. And we are very happy that now from the Flanders Environment Agency, Cor van Hoof is now presenting what can be done, if you want, on the regional level, and we are very we are very curious to hear what could be done and to get inspirations also from this regard.
Okay, good morning. I'm Cor van Hoof from the Flemish Environment Agency, so the water agency in the Flemish region in Belgium. Jens informed me that you have been around already a lot, so you have some picture of our region. I will not explain how responsibilities are organized in Belgium, because it's a difficult situation, but the regions are fully responsible for environmental policies, also for water policy. I will tell you a bit more about the Blue Deal and how this program started, was organized, what we did, some experiences. If you have questions later on, I'm here to answer. It's here, yeah. Yeah, okay. I will not talk too much about the details and why we started the Blue Deal. You have seen we are a region with many sealed surfaces. We had problems with water scarcity in a series of years, and for that reason, in 2020, the Blue Deal started in our regions. In the meantime, we also had inundation problems, which made that we also included flood policy in the Blue Deal, but that's something I will explain you in the end, because in water reusing in sometimes humid regions is the focus of your project, so I will focus most on the drought aspects we tackled. We had a couple of years with drought and impacts on nature, on agriculture, but also on water supply for industry and for households. And for that reason, we decided to set up this Blue Deal program. What is it and why we did it? It's clear. We try to build up a structural and proactive approach. We also organized ourselves to be ready when drought is coming, but the scope of the program was really to set up in a structural way proactive initiatives. And we try to target to increase the robustness of the water system, and what this involved I will explain in the coming slides. And we want to prevent water scarcity, to prevent that there are drought problems and risks. All right. Outside the scope of the slides that have been presented already, because they scope much to the more northeastern part of Europe, but also in the northwestern part in Belgium, there are water scarcity problems, but I will not focus too much on that, because the situation is clear for you. But also here we have clear signals that climate change is having bigger impacts and effects. So there, we want to be ready for that. Today, or the last couple of days, you saw that Flanders, that it's wet here nowadays, but as we are with very many inhabitants, a high water use, no big rivers that are bringing water to us, the water availability per capita is low in our country or region, and for that reason, we need a structural approach. And that one of the reasons is also that land use, that there is a intensive land use, which makes that not that many water is infiltrating anymore, and for that reason we need further initiatives. I think this is explained already. All right, we have high vulnerability because we have that intensive water use, and we have some industrial sectors that are that need a lot of water. We have an intensive agriculture, mostly in the west of Flanders, not in the Aquadun region, which is close to the sea, but in the regions a bit more from the sea. And for instance, the potato industry that is on this picture needs a lot of water. Now I'm coming to the important part, the systemic approach. and I can compare this with what you are tackle in the WaterMan project. We have two main lines of work. We want to increase the sponge effect, organize our region in such a way that more water can infiltrate. I think this is not the main focus of the WaterMan project. The other line of work is working on more efficient water use, reducing water use, but also organizing ways to reuse water, and that's very similar to what is done in your project or where you are trying to look for solutions. Something you also mentioned in the first slides is that we are working or looking for ways to engage stakeholders. We are giving investment support. We have had some project calls. We are trying to stimulate them, but also have changed some regulations. For instance, with respect to rainwater, there are rather strong regulations or obligations in the Flemish region to collect rainwater, to try to reuse it, and if that is not possible, to infiltrate it before it is drained to the sewer system. So that's an example of regulation where that also can contribute a lot. And the important things we did is investments by our own regional governments, the Nature Agency, the Water Agency, the Land Agency. They got investment budget for own projects. We had a lot of support for local investments by project calls on different topics. We had investments in research and innovation, and then the regulation aspects where I gave already an example of. So, but these are the four important ways of working, ways of initiatives to have an overarching approach. Something about the budget. Here is the Blue Deal budget from the years 2021 and 2022, where many of the, most of the budgets were co-funded by the European Commission, by the Resilience and Recovery Facility, where Blue Deal budgets are part of the financing of the projects. This also means that there is time pressure on many of the projects because that European budgets have to be realized by 2026, which is for rather a lot of projects a challenge, but maybe it's also good to put some pressure on that. So for the years 2021 and 2022, this amount of money has been created, and projects are ongoing and in being realized. The last 2 years, it were internal Flemish budgets for the adaptation plan. So in that sense, the Blue Deal was incorporated in the adaptation policy of the region to continue the work that has been started but is not finalized yet, that couple of years ago. The last 2 years, we also had some important flood events, which also led to the situation that in the context of the adaptation plan, there was also a division of the budgets going to new droughts initiatives and flood protection, because the situation made that it was needed. And also another aspect that we paid a lot of attention to compared to before was impact monitoring. So in the organizing of the Blue Deal program, there was also an explicit approach to monitor impact both of projects and on the level of the water system. So we looked more deeply into groundwater and surface water status volumes. So some examples, we did water landscape calls. I think you visited already one of the projects of the Blue Deal. I checked on my phone this morning because Jens told me where you have been the last days. I think the Aquaduin project has been going already a lot of years, so that's not supported by the Blue Deal, if I'm right. But the Wiekevorst project is supported by one of these calls, not by the water landscape, but by another one. So, but if you want to get a grip of what kind of projects we supported, you visited one. I think it's part of the green-blue corridors, green-blue measures, where local projects from local authorities get support. So you visited one. My slide contains the wrong photo, but we also had some governance structure for the program. It's not the main focus of today, so I will not explain too much. And if there's too much time, Jens will say I have to come back on this slide. A bit summarizing, and with respect to benefits, we focus on water use, but also on re-wetting nature and other positive impacts of projects. So we also had re-wetting nature objectives. Some pictures here that we organized, both the built environment, but also open areas with nature-based solutions in order to be more resilient to climate change. Another couple of pictures to give you a view on the type of projects that have been realized this time in the built-up areas. Okay. We also tried to get into contact or convince industry and agriculture to take up the challenge. So also the industry or the entrepreneurship agency and the agriculture administration were involved in the program in order to stimulate them. Also, some of the project calls were directed towards industrial reuse of wastewater, towards reuse of water in agriculture, in order to have examples of how this is possible. And then the more recent evolution, I thought already that at the last 2 years there was an evolution to incorporate the Blue Deal into the adaptation policy in the Flemish region. And then the former government decided that from the new government on, which entered into force the end of last year, that they had to prepare every 5 years a Blue Deal vision note and action plan, where not only drought but also floods and water quality have to be taken up in an integrated water policy approach. The preparation process for this Blue Deal note is ongoing, and the ambition is to finalize it this year, and this should help the Flemish region the next couple of years to work further on this water scarcity, floods, and water quality challenges we are confronted with. But this is ongoing. Okay. There is a slide with also information in English, so this is the link to it.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much. Cool. You mentioned it with WaterMan. We were on a study tour here in Flanders, and we were really impressed how many different initiatives are there, and also to hear the numbers. 343 million euro dedicated to this topic. That means also, yeah, that there is already the awareness there. We met a lot of enthusiastic people really about this, and the need is already perceived. Or would you see you still have to convince people that this is something you have to deal with, or is this already common knowledge here in Flanders?
It's difficult to keep people convinced. The trigger to start with the Blue Deal program was a couple of years with intensive drought, 2017, 18, 19, and then the government took action. We see that 2024 was one of the wettest years we had in our monitoring since 1830 or so. If the new government had to decide on the budgets for the next years, they had to make a very difficult choice between all societal challenges. And the first couple of years, the Flemish budget has been reduced. It will further increase during the next couple of years, but even at the political level, it's difficult to get stable budgets to continue work. In the short term, it's not that urgent because there's still many projects that have to be finalized. In the longer term, this would be a bad situation, but as the situation it's now after 26, from 27 on, budgets will again increase, but I think society is convinced, but that's not enough to guarantee resources. So.
Yeah. Thank you also for this answer here. So, a lot of information, a lot of different perspectives now. As I said in the beginning, our proposal is that you can now take a deep breath, yeah, just to think again about what you would like to ask our speakers, and then we will have here 6 more or less hot chairs here after the little break. And then we will really would like to discuss with you. This will be then the arena for your questions, so that we open up the discussions a little bit and see, yeah, what will be in the end, what we can take home from these discussions. As I said, it's not the big coffee break yet. Yeah, it's just like, because 2.5 hours in a row is a bit hard. Yeah, so please 10 minutes. Yeah, grab something that you want. Have a look maybe also to the posters if you like. And then at 11 o'clock, yeah, sharp, we would like to start here again. And then it's time for your pressing questions. Okay, I saw already a lot of discussions going on in the breaks, also with the panelists here or the speakers. As I said before, we would like now to go on with just discussion. Yeah, we say panel discussion, but here you see the most important sentence, with involvement of the audience. Yeah, we are a small group here. We do not want to have this discussion only here around, but you are very, I would like to encourage you, yeah, now it's time to ask your questions. I have been reading faces, and I would say it doesn't need much of facilitation here. We have one technical remark, because it's a hybrid event. So my colleague Sarah and where is Pia? They have 2 microphones. Yeah. So if you want to say something and ask a question, you have to speak kind of through the microphone in order that this can also be broadcasted. This is the only thing. Here you see the speakers, you have your questions, and I would say, like, let's go on. So who has a question? Who would like to start? We have one very much. And when you ask your question, maybe you can also shortly say who you are and who you represent. present.
Sure, thank you very much for giving me the floor. So my name is Jean Estenwick. I'm policy coordinator at an organization called Aqua Publica Europea. It's the European Association of Public Water Operators. So we bring together more than 70 public water utilities from across Europe. I have two quick questions. The first one I think is for all panelists. So we've heard that there is obviously the water reuse regulation, but that several countries actually decided to opt out from the regulation. And when you look at the map, you see actually it's a lot of countries surrounding the Baltic Sea, like Finland, Latvia, Poland, and so on. So do you think there is like evolving mentalities in these countries due to increasing water scarcity all across Europe? So this is the first question. And the second question is really about financing. So obviously we've mentioned water use as a way to address water scarcity, but we organized a workshop together with the JRC last year and was one of our members actually from Turin in Italy. And he said, well, we are actually producing a lot of reclaimed water, so water we use, but no one wants to buy it because the industry actually takes water from free, so they abstract water from the ground and don't pay for it, while obviously they would have to pay to use or reclaim water. So how can we fix this financing conundrum and then promote water use to address indeed further water scarcity issues? Thank you.
Yeah, so two questions. The first question was about this opting out in the Baltic Sea region. I don't know, maybe Tobias, maybe Valentina, maybe you can have a perspective on that. How do you see it? Why did they opt out? You can just speak. It will be on, because I mean, also in your slides, I mean, the scarcity index that was quite high, and still, for example, Poland opted out. So why is that?
Can you hear me properly? Yeah. Well, I'm perhaps not the best person to say why exactly is that, but what I can tell you is that back in 2019, when the Commission was negotiating together with the European Council and with the Parliament, the hesitations of some member states were really due sometimes to a perception or a reality really that they had enough water. So they were saying, we do not do much irrigated agriculture. We do not see a need for setting up complicated structures and competent authorities that can receive requests, applications for permits. So it was really based on the knowledge that at the time there was enough water to go about. Since then, in my little experience, I can say that I am perceiving some change of mood with, at least within the people working sector and participating in my working group water reuse. You know, we started seeing people showing up to meetings that maybe they were not right at the beginning because they didn't think it was very relevant for their countries. And so as I said, I haven't been working in this sector for 20 years, but in what I've seen in this short period of 5-6 years is that there's curiosity, there's more interest, perhaps not strictly speaking in the agricultural sector, but as we've seen in Poland, more in industrial and urban uses, which is fine. I think it's only fair that if you know, a country like Spain does a lot of irrigated agriculture, so it makes a lot of sense for a country like Spain to do. Perhaps for other countries that rely less on irrigation for their agriculture, it's just more profitable, more interesting to move into the industrial or environmental or civic uses. So just an observation, I would expect this map to evolve with time and also with the evolution of water. I mean, it can be a bit unpredictable. Flanders was very dry for a few years, and then last year we got a lot of rain. But again, is this rain infiltrating where it should, or is it just running off? So I'm convinced that we will see more of it in the years to come. Yeah.
How is it? I mean, you are coordinating the Water Core Group, and there are 5 countries and now 6 with WaterMan represented. Is it? Do you see the awareness is there, or is it still this up and down depending on how the last summer was? Yeah.
Yes, I think it's up and down. I think also let's remember that this is a fairly new issue for the northern countries. I mean, water reuse, as we have talked about already, is that the need wasn't there for 10, 20 years ago. It's quite recent, and I agree with Valentina that I'm quite sure that if we give this time, we'll see more countries joining. And I also agree with you that it's the ones that perhaps haven't joined now. It's partly due to the need. They don't see a need, and the need is very local. Even if there is a need, it's on a local scale. So, but the overall picture, they might not think. And the other part, perhaps, is also that there are certain uncertainties of the water quality. What they are scared of actually using this, as they see that let's let others be the front runners and we can join a bit later. So it's twofold in that sense. But yeah, so I'm quite convinced as well that if we wait a few more years, we'll see more countries joining this.
If I summarize also what you said, Clara, can it be that simply there is an openness or the awareness is there that water scarcity will be an issue, but that simply when it comes to the reuse regulation, that the use case that is defined, agricultural aggregation, that this is actually the one that is very, very, I would say, not the common one in the Baltic Sea region. Do you have evidence for that then in your...
Yes, I think that we have to look at very holistic way at this problem, because we have legal problem, financial, and also some social challenges. And this regulation is concentrated on agriculture. It opens the door to other ways to use this treated wastewater, and we base on this application even for irrigation of green area. However, agriculture has its point of view to explain the situation. And for example, in Poland, I really don't see the possibility. But why? Because we have all these legal and financial aspects that agriculture farmers can take groundwater from granted, and they can use any kind of water, just they pay a little or even nothing. So they are not motivated to find another way of water, because this water is there. So water scarcity is maybe a problem because it doesn't rain. But there is still a cheap water in Poland for farmers. And it is financial issue, but also political. How to organize policy, how to change the law, just to motivate them to cooperate with urban wastewater treatment operators. So it is really a long, long way, and as Tobias mentioned, it is the beginning of our way, and we have a lot to do. And another aspect is social aspect about yak factor and about reluctance to use treated water recovered from wastewater, from sewage. And even European Commissioner, remember that you had this survey among citizens of the European Union. And I remember that south of Europe, they were very positive toward. Yes, we can reclaimed water is as good as groundwater, as surface water. But the northern part of Europe answered no. It's worse. It's not possible to treat it in the same way. So we have really a lot to do also in this aspect.
The second question, could you just summarize it very shortly again?
Yeah, so I was saying basically that we have a lot of members that are producing reused water for reclaimed water, but there is no market to sell it, because industries and also farmers are then abstracting legally or illegally water directly from the ground, so water they don't pay. So why would farmers and industries then buy reclaimed water when they can have water for free?
I can just mention, because I represent Polish water utilities, and we also cooperate with Euro Federation of Water and Wastewater Utilities in Europe, so we exchange a lot of ideas. But as I see water utilities, we are still based on tariffs. So it is very sensitive area, yes, that we have to collect money from people and send, and pay all our activities, but all our core activities. We cannot just spend this money at our idea that we have. Mm-hmm. So it is really a sensitive area that we have to treat, to solve. And another aspect is just to have a client, a recipient of this water. Mm-hmm. So that's why, for example, in our survey, it was mentioned that should be some B2B contract between operator and recipient. Yeah. And it needs time. So in Spain, Italy, it's solved. But in Poland, it should be solved.
Yeah. And in Flanders, it's also already solved. So maybe you can also add to this, Cole. How is the situation? How do you see
solved
this issue?
Is maybe a bit exaggerated, but yeah, we have some experience with that. But for instance, the Aquadun project that you visited, where the treated water from the wastewater treatment plant is further treated, infiltrated in the dunes, and then used for drinking water production. When the project started, I think 15 years ago or so, yeah, there was the agreement between the drinking water company and the region that they do not have to pay for the wastewater treatment effluent. So in that sense there, the construction was made that because it was for public use and drinking water production, they did not have to pay for that water. We see in other projects that that it is an issue that users of treated water have to pay, even if there are groundwater tariffs, even if you have to pay for extracting surface water from the navigable ways. Yeah, it's an issue for economic actors that they have to pay for the water they want to reduce. One legislative changement we made was that the wastewater levy was organized before in such a way that you always had to pay it. Now we rearranged it such that if company B uses the wastewater, reuses the wastewater from company A, that there has not to be paid a levy for the discharging towards B from A. So there are some possibilities in legislative arrangements, but yeah, for sure, agriculturists, often not the richest economic actors in our society, do not have many financial possibilities to pay for reused water, even if they are able to tackle the risks, before the bacterial risks that were brought into, or checked which techniques work for that. In the meantime, we also found several PFAS components in our wastewater, which makes it more challenging to reuse it. So trying to change, putting a price on traditional sources helps to lower the difference with reused water, but yeah, it's not a wholly solution.
Okay. Further questions? I cannot imagine that. Yeah? Yes, Elisa.
Thank you. I'm Elisa Rose from a Water Research Institute from Berlin, KWB, and I have the question to Valentina. When you made that regulation, did you discuss, at least in the background, further water reuse purposes? And because from my scientific point of view, it's a pity that it's only for agricultural reuse, and it would have been a way more better driver when also industrial reuse cases or other applications would be integrated already in that, because many people, especially in Germany, they are very carefully when it comes to the water infrastructure, critical infrastructure, water supply, and nobody wants to make or be the first making possible faults in such a critical field.
Yes, when the the regulation was developed, and there was this conceptual exercise to see what to do exactly, a choice was made to focus on the agricultural sectors for two reasons. One reason is that in Europe and in the world, actually, agriculture is the biggest water consumer. So it was really trying to focus on where the main issues were. The reasoning being, if we can incentivize it there, we will have a lot to gain. That was reason number one. But then when you develop legally binding legislation at European level, you have a number of principles that you have to respect. One of them being that it has to have added value and respect the principle of subsidiarity, which means that the EU should regulate where it makes sense to regulate at EU level, while what makes more sense to be regulated at local level should be left at that level. That means that you need to have a good reasons at European level to regulate at European level. When it comes to agricultural irrigation, you have produce which is irrigated with this water, produce which is then put on the internal market. And so it was necessary to have harmonized criteria and parameters for the water so that you could safely consume your strawberries or tomatoes in Finland or in Spain or in Italy, wherever, Poland. So this was the strong motivation. When every piece of legislation needs to be accompanied by an impact assessment, and when the impact assessment for this regulation was done, another use was considered, and it was managed aquifer recharge. And this option was discarded at the time because there was no real EU added value in doing that. It's a very localized area, and there's rules regulating the quality that water has to have in groundwater, so there was no legal grounds to act at EU level. So we're now looking at expanding the policies, and we do see potential in the framework of water resilience and adaptation to climate change to explore other uses. Industry seems very promising, urban uses seem very promising. Whether that would then turn into EU legislation, where we will need to see whether it makes sense to regulate at EU level or whether the EU can act in a more supportive role through guidelines, through best practice exchange. This remains to be seen, but the EU reason of being must be there for EU regulations to be adopted.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, my name is Claes Eriksson. I work at the municipality and city of Kalmar in southeastern Sweden. And I would like to connect to that last question. Although I'm not talking for the Swedish water industry, I have understood from talks with my colleagues at the Kalmar Municipality Water Company and from conferences that I have read the summary from these conferences from the Swedish water industry, that they are very positive to the reuse and recycling of different types of wastewater, but they don't know how to do it, and they actually would like to have some guidance for this work, like who is responsible for what, the producer or the user, or both of them, the process of the applications. The authorities are quite uncertain how to handle those applications. They would like some guidance of that, on that, and the quality requirements are not so clear for them. They would like some definitions on that. And also what analysis has to be taken and the methods, and also the quality and risks depending on what is the source of the water, the incoming water, the recycled water before it is processed.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Klaas. I don't know if
Shall
someone
I
wants.
just
Yeah,
react
yeah,
briefly?
please.
Thank you. I'm making mental notes of this. Capacity building is certainly something that we've been thinking about, not just in the industrial area, but also in the more experimented, if you want, agricultural field. We do see that sometimes a bit more capacity building is needed. We do have some examples from, I recall, I think Portugal, for example, or Spain. Even in these countries with a lot of experience, the setting up of applications, the obligations about the risk management plans, etc., they did require some work and some capacity buildings for the more local actors. So while this is maybe not something which is really in the hands of the EU to deal with, what we can help with is supporting this process and seeing if we can export maybe good practices from, say, Portugal to Sweden in another sector with the necessary adaptation. So this is an aspect that we've been thinking about and that I would like to focus more. On the rest, I will reflect together with colleagues. It's sometimes a little difficult to think of an one-size-fits-all kind of approach when it comes to agriculture and the health parameters that are in the EU regulation. Well, E. coli will make you sick, regardless of whether you're sitting in Malta or in Poland. But with other parameters, this might not be the case, or the industrial landscape is very different. So the needs parameter-wise that you have in, say, a paper mill is not the same as you would need in the dairy industry or in energy just for cooling. So I struggle a little with the idea of setting parameters, but we might be perhaps need to think about more of a framework in which these parameters might be developed on a case-by-case basis. But I'm very open to ideas, so if anyone has got ideas in this sense, please get in touch. And yeah.
Just one. Yes.
Okay, and also Cor has an.
I support Valentina's idea that we cannot regulate everything, and maybe it is an idea to just have some very general regulation. And after, as you did with this regulation on agriculture, that these guidelines on risk assessment are deeply analyzed, and it is something that is much more helpful than just a regulation. And when you look at the EU law, there is still more and more risk assessment issues. So we cannot regulate everything. And this risk analysis, risk assessment, which is in drinking water directive, in urban wastewater treatment directive, everywhere, it is a solution just to make our solutions fitting to purpose.
Yeah, some Flemish experience also with the regulation. Many of the aspects of the regulation or getting into force because it's a regulation, but member states had to organize a permit system, and how will we treat that when projects are reusing urban wastewater. This is the scope in agriculture. This is the scope of the regulation. In organizing how we are treating this permitting approach, we enlarged the scope of the regulation. Also, other waters reused. We required that they had to, in agriculture, we required they had to make a risk analysis because, also from other wastewaters, a risk assessment can be at stake. Also, not only use in agricultural use, but also, for instance, local authorities using it in parks and sports terrains. Yeah, also there is an E. coli risk if you reuse wastewater. So we enlarged the scope a bit, but it's sensitive because after the farmers' protests of early last year, some initiatives were started to getting into contact better with them, and one of the aspects was an evaluation. Do we need all these rules? So it's the same question at a regional scale. Where do we need rules, and where do we not want them? Because we have the impression, right or not, that administrative burden due to these rules is too big. So we have tried to enlarge the approach a bit, but not without discussion.
Oh, there is also a question, Tobias, I think, from the chat, yeah? Or
yes, a very specific one from the project leader of the North Coast project. He has a question about the potential of water reclamation in the Baltic Sea region compared to the freshwater extraction. He mentions that in Italy he has the figures for the total amount of freshwater extraction is 9 billion cubic meters, and the water reclamation potential is 3 billion, so 1/3. Is the figures about the same? Does anyone know in the Baltic Sea region, or are do they differ? Anyone?
No, I don't have such a figure, but we can just assess, and you assess, I think, the amount of treated wastewater. So it is, I understand that this is a potential, yes? Yes. In ideal solution, we could have all treated wastewater recovered and reused, yes? So, but possible, but there is a potential. And which percent we will use, that is a question.
Yeah, and do you think the figures are the same as in Italy? About do we have about 1/3? I mean, I guess it's the same. If you look at how much water goes into per capita, it's about the same in the northern countries as in Italy. It should be no big difference, but
I'm unable to say. I don't have figures in mind. I believe that there will certainly be figures about the amount of wastewater which is treated. We have decades of reporting under the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive, so that information must be available, although I don't know it right now on the tip of my head. Now, the potential of it, a lot will depend on many different factors. At one point, it costs to treat water, so it needs to make sense from an environmental and an economic point of view. So I guess that potential in each specific region would depend on all of these factors, as well as on the environmental needs. If in a hypothetical scenario you divert all the effluents, 100% of the effluents from treatment plants, you might end up with not meeting the ecological flow in surface waters. So I find it a bit difficult there must be ways of estimating as it was done for Italy, but I'm unable to do so here or immediately, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, there is one more question, yeah, and then, yeah.
Yes, hi, my name is Anu Reinikainen, and I come from Natural Resources Institute Finland, and I'm also part of the North Coast project. So I was just wondering, do you think that we need more scientific research and evidence about these issues? For example, like setting up some kind of numbers or boundaries for certain kind of emissions or bacteria or whatever. Do we have enough science-based evidence already?
Yes, we need, and it's still it's still ongoing, and there is a lot of research. There are also researchers here in this room, but yes, we still need more. Yeah.
Yes, Linda, you have also a question. If you just come forward there.
Yes, hello, my name is Lina Lindahl and I come from Research Institutes of Sweden. I have a question because we have an issue in Sweden, or hinders for reusing water between actors, is that if you take water that is usually sent to one recipient and another actor takes the water and then uses it and then let it to their recipient, we need new permits. And this is a hinders which makes industry not want to take or reclaim water, because then they need to apply for new environmental permits, and then they get the issue stricter. This is an issue we have been discussing in Sweden. Is this something that is an issue also in other countries? And also, Valentina, if you have any comments regarding this? You understood the question.
Not very specific. We do hear about sometimes obstacles of this nature, where maybe different agencies are involved in the risk management and some are more conservative than others. It's one aspect that in some sessions of our working group we have tried to address, the administrative setup, and trying to have different member states share their experience in the interest of perhaps finding good ideas to overcome these barriers. We will continue to do so. As I said, supporting in the application of the regulation is certainly in the cards, is something that we want to do. And discussions in this framework could also then be recycled, so to speak, for other purposes, to see exactly who asks for a permit, where does this stop, and the responsibility of another starts. Whether this can be regulated, strictly speaking, I don't see much scope. Already when negotiating this regulation, there was a lot of pressure from member states to set the general principles, but then leave it to the administration to work out what was the best way for them to manage them. Now, if this proves to be an obstacle, we can try to help putting different member states, different authorities in contact to see whether there's ways of overcoming this.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay, so I think there is always this question around the question, is it really necessary to regulate more, or is less more? Yeah, so this is kind of a question that arises here. I would suggest at this point we make a little bit another short intervention here. Let's have a look to this at a very practical level. It was like, we need figures, we need data, but sometimes also anecdotal evidence is maybe fair enough. And Klaas, you also already kind of asked here questions, and thanks that you joined me here for a little bit of a talk, because I have to get my, this one, and then we can do this. So Klaas is at the same time also one of the, is from Kalmar municipality, And what we would like to do is it's just like having the look really like how is it in practice? How is the regulatory framework that is in place really working if you want to get started with water recycling? And one of the pilot projects here in the WaterMan project, and our pilots, like I said, they are not about technological innovation. It's just like the low-hanging fruits and then get them done. And you in Kalmar, Klaas, you had one very concrete, a very, I would say, small project, and then you just started, and this is also running, and maybe we can have a little bit of a look together here, how it was, and also how this regulatory framework, including the water reuse regulation, may have helped you or not. So maybe you can talk a little bit about, what did you, I do not see the slides changing here. What you did in Kalmar, so that we, here we have a little bit of a visualization on that, and then maybe, I don't know, maybe you can just tell us a little bit what it is about, and if you want to hear, we can also come here, just to explain what are you doing, or what did you intend to do?
Okay, the background, well, what we are doing is that we are taking out a small part of the effluent from the municipal wastewater treatment plant in Kalmar that goes out into the Baltic Sea, and we disinfect that with UV light to make it, to reduce the risks for our staff, and then we use that water for irrigation in our parks. And the background to that is that from 2016 and for 4 consecutive years in a row, we had very severe drought problems, and then we had 3 more years with still drought, but even though they were not so severe. And that made us aware that we didn't have the amount of water that we needed, especially if we look at it in a future climate changing perspective. So we were looking for a more resilient source of irrigation water. That's the background.
And that's not only a vision, but it is existing. Here you see really the pictures. Maybe you can just explain a little bit what you are doing. We see here the disinfection container. We see here kind of a truck, yeah? And then we see also here trees. Maybe you can just explain what is going on in Kalmar. What are you doing in practice since, as I understood, since, summer last year you are here?
Yes, since, well, we started in May, June, this past season in 24 to operate this plant. So the disinfection plant is within a container. All the equipment, except for one pump that lifts the water into the container, is within that. So, which makes it easy to move to another place if there is a need. And it is placed by the pumping station. So we pick up the water just from that pipe that goes out into the ocean, and it goes into the disinfection equipment that's inside here, and there's a filter, and there's a so-called UV reactor which treats the water, or it, with ultraviolet light, and that kills most of the microorganisms. So we get a safe water, so to say.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you take the municipal wastewater here as the source, and what are you doing with it? Is this man here, your colleague there, doing? What do you use the water for in the end, and where do you use it?
Yes, we use it for mainly irrigating trees and other plants and flower beds within the city, and we usually irrigate trees during the establishing phase, and as you can see, we fill these water bags that are around the trees. So we distribute the water with the tractor and the tank trailer, and one of the so-called innovative parts of the project and a bit of a testing is that we only run the plant when the tank trailer is filled, or when we need to fill it. Otherwise it's shut off. Although the design of all this equipment is really done for continuous operation, but we do it just on and off. Mm-hmm. So that's a bit of a testing.
Mm-hmm. Testing also because you will have a water recycling plant in Kalmar in the further perspective. So there is water recycling coming up. Let's stay at this very concrete and local and small use case here. So if I can understand it correctly, on the one hand, when we reflect now on the water reuse regulation, so the source, is applicable here, it's municipal wastewater, while the use case here is out of its scope, so it means that it is urban irrigation of green areas. Yes. So how was it then for you? I mean, you were among pioneers, I would say, also in Sweden, to do really reuse here in such a way. How was it? How did you approach authorities? I mean, there were also maybe permits involved. How did you go about this process? And was the water reuse regulation there of any relevance for you in this process? How did this work?
We had some dialogue with the authorities from the start, and also with our staff, I would like to say. And yes, the regulation, I think, helped us. I'm talking about the 2020-741 regulation. Although the permission to produce and to use this recycled water is not, it's not depending on that regulation. But it helped us in the process of getting the permission, I would say. That's what they have written in their background text, so to say, their arguments to approve the production and the use of this reclaimed water. So I was quite surprised we had such a smooth process with our regulatory authorities. And I think that was one reason was that we had done quite a thorough risk analysis, and we described why we want to do this and how we were going to do it. And like I said, the risk analysis, I think that was a vital part of the process that made it go quite smooth. It only took 8 or 10 weeks, I think.
Did you also take the water quality levels or categories of the water reuse regulation as an orientation here? And for what quality did you in the end here go in your use?
Yes, we actually we did not in the application. We did not refer to the 2741 regulation, but to another regulation that is about public swimming beaches, so to say. But that would be about the same as Class C quality in the directive. Since we have been operating this for now one season, we see that it exceeds those quality requirements. But that's what's in the permit, like Class C water.
I mean, what you were very concerned about, I mean, in the end, it's municipal workers, yeah, municipal employees doing the irrigation. So it's not only about, I would say, the safety of the plant, yeah, but it's also about the safety of the human beings. How are your experiences now after half a year? How were the employees kind of perceiving this? Were there any problems with this, or how is the feedback that you got from your colleagues there?
Well, the health and the risks, eventual risks with this water was a primary issue for us. And at the start, when we presented this project for our staff, there was some really negative reactions, and some were more skeptical, but they thought maybe this is a good idea, but they wanted to know some more about this, and especially about the risks for themselves and their health. So we involved them from the start, so they were in the process with the risk analysis and the risk assessment. We did like a step-by-step risk assessment, all the steps in how we produce and use the water. And we also invited staff members from the municipality water company, which had already several years of experience using sewer water that was not disinfected. And after these talks, and they could ask them questions and so on, and the answers that they got and the risk analysis, what that analysis showed, made them positive. And after one season, I would say they are quite enthusiastic. They're not only positive, they are enthusiastic to be a part of this, well, to contribute to a better resource householding, so to say, economy, a circular economy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, clear rules can help in these processes, I would say, and I think also this graded level that you oriented in also that was helpful, if I understood correctly, also in the communication with your colleagues, yeah, that you could also say like what quality level you will be achieving, and there was an orientation that was also available and transparently available. And that is also maybe a question, yeah, is that maybe to Valentina, just to say, is this, you know, you see that there is a use of this regulation. Is this something you have in mind, that the regulation is not limited to this very case of agricultural irrigation? Because of course what is underlying the risk assessment and management, and also these graded quality levels of water that can be already now be helpful also in other contexts. And could that not alone, I understood very well the considerations with agricultural irrigations and the process, but could this, this transparency that you create with these levels and these procedures and the trust you create on the side of consumers, could that alone not be a motivation to also extend the application range of this reuse regulation?
It is certainly an aspect that could indeed play a role, and I hear with interest this case where the regulation was used as a sort of basis or inspiration for the work done. And I think that this could be certainly replicated in other sectors. We must also consider the fact that there's a lot of existing rules that have been, I think, used also in this case, health and safety at work. So you see, with the agriculture, there's the element of irrigating food. So the consumer is clearly. Now, when it comes to irrigating public parks, I think that indeed the population would be interested to know that if they walk on a wet park, they're not going to get sick, and certainly the workers. When it comes to industrial plants, I think it would be mostly about ensuring the health safety at work in the plant. I don't think the consumer would be so concerned unless you propose to use this in the production. That's a whole different story. But yeah, certainly. I mean, this is an aspect that we should consider and see the feasibility of it, and ensuring that there's a drive towards these other uses, but without hindering it with excessive regulation where it may not be needed. And that's always the million-dollar question: where do you put that bar? But it's very interesting, this sort of experience. So if you have any other examples, I'm a taker. Yeah.
We have a coffee break. Yes.
I can also add that on this tank trailer, we have advertised to the public that this is recycled water in order to start the interest and to give a positive attitude. I don't know if there is a negative attitude among the general public in Kalmar, but this is anyway a way of showing what we're doing.
Yes. So if I understood correctly, in the end, all this permission process you would be through, you were treated as a one-family house, yeah, in the end, by your authorities, kind of, yeah?
Yeah.
So if I can convert. So Cor, maybe a question to Flanders. How is it there? If this use case, this application would have gone through, would this also have been, you had to refer to something and negotiate kind of case by case here? Or do you have already clearer regulations in place that would have made it easier? What is your kind of experience also? Where does it need a little bit more of clear rules, and where it's good to be just responsive to what is going on in this field?
Yeah. It's not my biggest expertise, but I think in the implementation of the regulation, we foresaw that for other applications of treated wastewater, the same risk approach had to be used. And in that sense, I think in the Flemish case, if this project would not be in Sweden, but in a Flemish city, that a similar approach, I think the criteria for sea use would be used. And I don't know whether they would use the same sticker on the container, but I think a similar approach would be developed. In that sense, it's also a question at what level, regionally, nationally, European, do you want to develop more detailed rules? Because it also depends on what kind of water use is most interesting at that region, that country, that countries. So that's the challenge to decide on where do we need rules, and then you have not reached consensus yet about do we get rules. But But a similar risk approach was behind what we have developed. But we see that in some projects, risks are bigger than we had hoped. We have, in the bunch of projects we are ongoing, we have, for instance, a project in Antwerp where they want to use the effluent of the wastewater treatment plant on a bigger scale. They want to build a circular water net in the city of Antwerp, a city with 500,000 inhabitants, such that they can reuse it in several places, but they are stuck with PFAS problems in the effluent, which leads to the situation that they will not be, that it will be too expensive, or at least at the moment, to reuse that water. So they have to look for other solutions. They are looking for some superficial surface water to use in that network. So sometimes risks are bigger than we hoped. So yeah, maybe it's also a proof that the risk assessment works, but not a nice consequence of it.
Okay, we are getting a little bit to the end of our time frame. So Tobias, are there any further questions online? And then I would like to open also for another round, a final round of questions to the audience here in the room.
Yes, I can start with one more question from the online participants. It's from the County Administration Board in Kalmar County. And it's about funding. I guess it's also addressed to Flanders. She seems to be a bit jealous on the money that you have received. But she also recognizes that there's a difference in Sweden in the sense that it's a very regional problem, water scarcity. And at the same time, there's no funds available for Kalmar specifically, especially those amounts. Instead, we're dependent on national authorities. How were you able to gather these amounts? And is it only regional funds, or is it also national funds? And how did that work go about? And if there's any other ideas how to receive funds, she's also interested in that.
Yeah, I already told to some people during the break, the Blue Deal program was decided early 2020, in the middle of the COVID crisis. That year, some other regional budgets could not be realized because it was sewer projects where the region is subsidizing municipalities and municipalities for their sewer works, but they could not realize their projects. And in that sense, there was some money or some tens of millions money that year. And the next 2 years, we used the European budgets. They were divided between countries in function of economic parameters, and countries had to decide what to do with that money. And in our region, the choice was made to use a substantial amount of that for the Blue Deal and drought mitigating measures. And the last 2 years in the adaptation approach, there were enough regional budgets to give money to adaptation measures. This year and next year, there's only a small amount of money available, and it will increase further. So a big part of it was European money, but it was a political decision where the recovery funds would be used. So it depends on what the country saw as a priority at that moment. A drawback of that of that approach was that you had to realize in a short time. So it were the projects that were ready on a shelf that received money, and those ones that are maybe better but needed more time to prepare, we could not support them, and yeah, that's a complaint we hear now sometimes. Other partners that have a good or even better project than the ones we could support at that moment, or as jealous as the Swedish people in the. Yeah.
Is there more, Tobias? Or I just go now here to this round once again. Yeah, Beate and Linda, I see. Anyone else? So we get an overview. So we take these two questions and then, I don't know, Tobias, is there one more before?
No.
No, okay. We can go for these two questions there and then we try to summarize a little bit or give a little bit of outlook how this discussion could go on.
Yeah, this is Beate Böhme speaking from Germany, from the Federal Authority of Saxony. I have a question to Klaas. I was surprised to learn that it was only like 8 to 10 weeks you required to get the permit from the Environmental Authority, which is really wow. So, and I would like to get an idea about the efforts you had to undertake to do the risk assessment, because I assume that it could be an obstacle for projects to get all the data and information for the risk assessment, like if there are requirements for do any analysis in the lab, to do any data collections, or like compared to the period of time for the permit, how much time did it take to get all the data for the risk assessment? Was it clear what I wanted to ask?
Well, the time before we sent in the application was maybe a couple of months, and we had a consultant that helped us with the risk analysis, and but we did some work ourselves. But maybe it was about 2 months' work with the risk assessment before we sent in the application. And yeah, and it was also a description of why we want to do this and how we intended to do it, and together with the risks, both for the staff and for the general public and for the environment. So there were kind of three parts, and yeah, I'd say the regulation 2020/741. The risk assessment was partly based on that regulation, but also on Swedish laws for, well, the protection of our staff and workers. So it was a combination.
May I just add on this question? And what about the risk for groundwater? Like, did you have to bring any proofs that the groundwater is not affected by the water what you're infiltrating when in the ground?
Yes, that was an issue, and because we're spreading it out over a large area, the amount of water that we apply on each spot, so to say, is very low. It's like maybe 150 liters every time, and it's done once a week, and it's done for 3 years, and then we move to other places. The total assessment found that there's a very low risk. The amount of nutrition that we apply and so on was also assessed, and well, it landed in this is not a problem.
We had two questions, and then Linda and yeah.
Yes, I was just curious about, you talked about what is the timeline for the update or the revision of the water reuse directive, that you said that you encourage input from stakeholders, but what is that window? Because I guess
Well, the regulation sets a legal deadline for this evaluation. It needs to be done by 26 June 2028. So we are bound by that deadline. It's so we are starting to look into it. The problem that we might have is that the full reporting cycle will only come in mid-2026, leaving a rather short time afterwards. That's why I'm starting to look around to see whether there's even just anecdotal information or studies or that can already give some information. But yeah, so that is the deadline. Now, what we will do with then the results of the evaluation, I do not know. It will depend on, you know, several different factors. What we find out, do we have enough data to actually be able to say something? Did we receive any really interesting feedback that makes us think that we should reopen the regulation, or should we stick with this regulation and work along other lines? That is way too early right now to say.
Okay.
But if you have any input, anytime between now and 2028, more than welcome.
Yeah, because I was thinking if you incorporate in other areas, industry, for example, I guess you need to do a bit of a work until 2028 also, so that that work has to be done before.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So anytime
Yes.
from now on, any input is more than welcome. It's always useful to hear from projects that even at a very local scale, it just gives us useful information about possible obstacles or where help might be needed, you know. So.
Perfect, great.
Okay,
thanks.
one last question, and then we try to make a little bit of summary round here and some light statement, and then we go on discussing during the coffee break. It's not over then, yeah? So.
Yeah. Hello, Oskars Purmals from University of Latvia. In respect of research, tasks, ideas, it's still is quite big field, unanswered field, I think so. Because when we are looking on this legal framework, for example, the same agriculture, we need some pathogens, BOD, turbidity. And it's actually not answering is appropriate or no, because in this legal frame it fits, we can put on our fields. But when you are in water crisis, probably your list of demands is much lower. And in Northern Europe, it's actually when we have this contact with stakeholders, it's always, of course, risk assessment should be done, but there is these questions, how about microplastics, how about emergent pollutants, because there were some mistakes in the past, not in respect to probably reclaimed water, but we added bisphenol A to plastics. Decades later, it's bad, let's not do it. And the same question in Latvia and other countries, when we have conversation with legislative organs in these countries, they want to see more studies about long-term effects. We all know that in Southern Europe they're using, but there is not actually so much like data or results on what happened with the soil or this emergent pollutant presence after 10 or 20 years of usage. For 1 year, it's probably cannot track even, but this other aspect on this question already comes price. The more wishes we have, the more it costs to analyze. And the same was, there was no clear roadmap what to analyze, how to analyze. Actually, we have also challenges in this Renewable Water project when we made our pilots, how to analyze, how to prove that it is safe. And this also is a question that maybe if there's some more patterns, more examples, others can follow and maybe also give more addition to this understanding, is it safe or no? Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Yes. Thank you very much. And yeah, we are coming here back to the European perspective in the end. I mean, this is something we can all profit from, because water recycling is a new field in the Baltic Sea region, but it's a common practice already in South Europe, and especially when it comes to questions of safety and ways to achieve that, there are already answers available. And in the WaterMan project in May, we were in Musia, for example, to explore that, and I think there were already answers. Valentina, do you want to say something? Yes. Otherwise, I would make a final round here with a panel.
Yes, just briefly react. I completely understand that there's worries about microplastics and emerging pollutants of emerging concerns, and we keep hearing about the PFAS, and these are indeed very huge problems. I am just not convinced that this is just a problem of recycling water. I think we have a problem in our surface waters. We keep finding more and more PFAS in soils, in the air we breathe, in the food we eat. So is this a problem of water reuse, or is it a more generalized problem about pollution in our environment in general? So I'm absolutely convinced that we need further research. We are trying to work also on methodologies on how to measure microplastics. You know, perhaps that under the Drinking Water Directive, work is ongoing to develop such methodologies. So yes, we are all aware of the problems. Whether this is strictly linked to water reuse or if it's a more generalized problem, I would tend to think it's a more generalized water. Of course, you could say that they might get more concentrated in wastewater, and that certainly is an aspect that should be taken into account when developing the risk management plans. I agree with you that, of course, the very long-term perspective perhaps is not so clear yet, but I do not think that irrigating with surface abstracted water is a lot safer in that sense. So yeah, more research, clearly welcome, more work on methodologies to actually measure these things. As you may know, there's also a proposal which is now being discussed by the European Parliament and Council about water pollutants, where some limits on PFAS are proposed. So yeah, it's ongoing work, certainly. Yeah.
Thank you for giving us this wider perspective. So for the concluding round here, maybe also with the panelists here, so it is just like what we learned is in 2028, also thank you for this question, there is now the evaluation of the water reuse regulation. We heard also, yeah, that there is an openness also to consider both when it comes to the sources of the water and of the utilization of the waters, to consider if there might be other kind of application cases to be considered, but also always with this balance if, yeah, what has to be, on the one hand, the question of subsidiarity, what is the level, yeah, where you have to regulate it, but also always this, you know, balance between, yeah, making too many rules or too much of rules, but versus giving a clear framework where it is needed. So in view of that, maybe a last round here, first to the four of you, class. So if you would have two wishes, yeah, in this evaluation, what would you say, what should be looked a little bit more into, and in which direction could it be? And then I would like to proceed with the four of you here for the concluding. Or one is also enough, one wish.
As I said, I cannot speak for the whole industry, but what I've picked up is guides for how to do this assessment. That the process seemed to be a problem.
Okay, so very practical guidance. Clara,
we have,
two.
Yes, we have a very good law because we have all these rules like precautionary principle, control at source. So let's start by this, just oblige this rule. I know that it's maybe a bit idealistic, but let's try to do it. And the second issue, let's do the risk assessment, so the result will be visible in this evaluation.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, would you also see need for further support in this issue, or?
Yeah, you asked for, or I prepared for expressing a wish. I said we have or I explained we have a bigger program on water reuse and more infiltration, but focused most on water reuse. We have a lot of projects, different scales, small ones, bigger ones. Some getting realized, many having difficulties, and some not being realized. But after all, we will learn something from the whole bench, and it's interesting for us, but I think it's at the European scale also interesting to exchange on where the reuse regulation had to be used and what are lessons from that, where other risk approaches had to be used, and what we learned from that. So well, let's try to learn from each other.
Well, I would say that why not continue this discussion about the water reuse regulation and to take part in that, and the possibility also to widen the applications of that to more than just agricultural waters. That would be an interesting aspect, I think, for the next coming years.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if you want to react, Valentina. Otherwise, I don't know. No, not for the time being. This is something for the networking coffee that will follow. Before we go into that, and I really encourage you, go on with the discussions. You can learn more about the pilots, not only about class pilots. We have 11 from them, and they are all very hands-on, very local, yeah, very practical. Just a little bit of, yeah, not summing up this we had already, but a little bit of outlook. Also, how this process will go on. Also, activities of the Water Core Group of Euroregion Baltic and also the WaterMan project. So there will be more events, yeah, to exchange on this issue. You see here several of them. We will have conferences in different locations in the next 12 months, and we will also have the possibility to visit Klaas in his overall on the spot, and then you can have a look to his container if you want it really hands-on and to deepen the discussion. And what I also want to stress is we want to also continue this discussion that we had, and it's already scheduled on 6th of November 2025. We will have a second round table discussion for which we then also try to see what we have learned further in the process in order to maybe have also further wishes articulated here. And to this, I would also like to invite, we were very happy that a lot of brother and sister projects were here, but we would also like to invite, of course, also we would be very grateful with further dialogue also on those who are a step ahead, a step further than we, so that we can really find out what are the demands also in view of the 2028 evaluation of that. And last but not least, also, if you want to dig deeper into that, we have also online resources, our website, of course, and we have also a water recycling toolbox for the Baltic Sea region with some practical advice, and that was launched today. So this is maybe also something if you want to keep in touch with us, with the project here to get further information. This is something that will now be launched. It is the first version, and that will be along with the experiences that we will have also with our model strategies and pilot actions be further extended. So it may be worth not only to show up at one of our events that we offer, but maybe also from here and there to have a look to our toolbox, and then step by step you will get further information there. So that was then, yeah, this was the kind of the end of this part. We will go on with the networking coffee. You are invited also here now to this coffee. And for the final words, Tobias, yeah, so just from the perspective of the Water Care Group, little goodbye.
Yes, well, first of all, thank you all that have attended, both online and the ones here in Brussels. It's been interesting to listen to the speakers. I think there are many important and interesting insights. We do notice that this is a quite new field still in our countries. We also recognize that the EU Commission is aware of our situation, which is, of course, good to know. There are still hinders, there's still obstacles that we have to work with, not very surprising. But we still have some time in the WaterMan project, and with this great team that we have, I'm sure that we can further continue with our work and try to continue developing aspects that can be to help. And of course, not the least, to keep the dialogue with the ones that are ahead of us and the EU Commission, others. And I hope to see all of you in November for the next roundtable event. And so from our side, I wish you all safe travel back to your home countries, and then see you in the future. So thank you.